Welcome to Between Two Pastries. This is Nicole.
Hey everyone, it's Annie.
We have a really fun interview today with a personal trainer from Georgia, right, Jennifer?
Yeah, in Atlanta.
Awesome.
First
Awesome.
time personal trainer, like first time we've had one on in 5 years,
Yeah.
over five
So
years.
we've been wanting to do this for quite some time. As all of our listeners know, we pretty much complain about the majority of trainers, which even saying that I'm hesitant to even say it, but it's like, we just hear these horror stories and I'm
Mm.
tired of like my clients getting really beaten down by these awful messages coming from trainers that really should not be having any dialogue around certain concepts and ideas. And I mean, to the degree that they do, right? And the projection and all of the stuff that goes with it. Anywho, Jennifer, we welcome you. We're really happy that you're here. And before we kind of get into all of our stuff, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your practice and your philosophy?
Yeah. So Jennifer Raby. I've been doing personal training independently now for about a decade. Within the past few years, going to full time. So I'd always been moonlighting and doing other things. And I was able to really hone in on just doing the personal training full time within the past 3 to 5 years or so. And I got into it like a lot of people, I think, just wanting to understand the ins and outs of the body a little bit more, selfishly wanting to know how I could like learn this stuff and apply it to myself. And just sort of really developed a knack for the education piece, because that was my earlier background was early childhood education.
Cool.
I worked in daycare, I was a nanny, I babysat, I worked with kids a
Awesome.
lot. And I really kind of developed a knack for the education piece and really understanding that like different people, different bodies learn differently.
Mhm.
And I want to be a trainer that can like speak to all of that and help, people who might not feel like they can work the conventional path, so to speak. Like they don't want to necessarily just do the big lifts, or they're not in it necessarily only for weight loss. They want to learn their bodies themselves. And so that's kind of the niche I settled into was, not just strength and weight loss, but, we only have this one vehicle. Why would we not want to get to know it as
Yeah.
intimately as possible? And so really helping people understand how their bodies function, why certain things might feel easy and others feel hard,
Yeah.
and meeting them where they are at so that the fitness that they're doing in the gym makes sense for their daily demands.
And that's awesome. We appreciate that.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah, of
amazing.
course. Yeah.
Meeting them where they're at, like
Yes.
that right there is just, I love that. I mean,
Mhm.
you always have to meet people where they're at. And
Hmm.
in particular, when someone approaches you, which they're already vulnerable in
Hmm.
wanting to perhaps lose weight or become a little bit more fit or work on some sort of skill they don't have. Maybe it's running or some sort of weightlifting or spin or what have you that you would find in a gym setting. That
Mhm.
already is a vulnerability. And then to have a trainer be like, yeah, we'll start here and do this, and it's kind of be this gung-ho looking at it through their own lens of
Yes.
where the trainer is at or the end goal. You see a lot of trainers who will do that where it's like, yeah, you can do that. Anything's possible. There's no such thing as, like as long as you're disciplined, you'll do it in a day. And like,
Oh, that word gets me. Like
oh,
it's
Right.
almost become like a four-letter word to me
yes.
because it's like it's been co-opted by people that, they're using that word almost as like a judgment. Like I
Yeah.
have more discipline than you, and I
Right.
need to teach you to have discipline because you
Yes.
have no idea what you're doing. And it's like, but
Not
yeah, what are
okay.
you actually really teaching them?
Yep.
Correct. Yeah, you're shaming them into doing what you want or to coming back to you if it's for money or whatever. And it's like you have to meet people where they're at. And that means like really assessing if it's one push up, it's one push up. And
Right.
in 2 weeks, maybe there's no change. It's still one push up. That's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not. And I think a lot of times trainers and even just, I mean, anyone in their profession takes it personally when they're working with clientele who are supposed to improve and there's no change seen. Well, there might
Mhm.
be change. You might not be something you can actually see, but
Right.
there's change happening physically, mentally,
Mhm.
emotionally, all of that kind of stuff. So That I think it's amazing. Meeting people where they're at is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just your comment too about discipline. Nicole and I have tried to talk often about this, and I don't know if listeners really truly understand what you're saying and what we're saying, that it is like a four-letter word. It is a judgment, and it's something that is really detrimental to our society at this point,
Hmm.
especially with social media probably being the driving force of that.
Yeah.
That concept where people can post like, oh, I did this and I'm so disciplined, or you're so disciplined, or do this challenge with me because then you're whatever. And it's just shame everywhere, which is really tough.
And the
So,
way that discipline is treated, kind of like willpower too,
Mhm.
like it's a finite bucket, and you only have so much to draw from. And that's not really like how life works. And so I try to replace the word discipline more with just like structure and consistency, like building systems around something that's going to support their movement goals.
Mhm.
And you know this as a runner as well, like, there's freedom in structure, like in the sense of like, okay, there's not going to be a question about what I do each day. It's just a matter
Right.
of like building my systems, my support systems to prioritize that. So, when we talk when the discipline I want people to think about is more like it's an internalized, like, what am I going to do for myself?
Mhm.
Not how am I going to prove that I'm doing the most ever or
Of
the most
course.
possible or whatever.
right.
Like, it's your discipline has nothing to do with other people or societal standards. It has everything to do with like what you do to support yourself. And so I really emphasize like the structure and the consistency piece over anything else. Like, if there is an important goal and you want to achieve this goal, you have to do steps toward that goal.
Mhm.
There's no way around it. So where people get tripped up, and I actually see a lot of trainers get tripped up, young trainers. We're sold in this idea that progress is immediate and it's dramatic.
Mhm.
And where people get really tripped up is attaching arbitrary timelines to things. I want to be this weight by this date,
Right. Yes.
or I want to be able to do this exercise, or I want to PR this race. Never mind that I haven't run a marathon in 10 years, or
Right.
whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
They attach these arbitrary performance and timelines to things, and we're sold on this idea that progress has to look a certain way, and trainers get really self-conscious
Mhm.
if they're not delivering those big dramatic
Yes.
before and afters.
Yes.
And then clients who have been led to believe that all training comes with a big dramatic before and after, when it's 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in, and they're like, I don't feel like I've done a whole lot yet. My role ideally should be like, well, let's actually really hone in on every tiny little piece. Like,
Mhm.
all right, you weren't training 8 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Now you are. You haven't touched a weight since you were a high school athlete. And now you are lifting weights consistently once a week. Or you couldn't get out of a chair without using your arms, pushing up against the chair, and now you're getting up just using your legs. So it's my job to really highlight those tiny little milestones,
Mhm.
because they will miss the forest for the trees if they think only in terms of like, oh, well, I didn't lose those 20 pounds in two
Absolutely.
Right.
months that I
Right.
thought I was going to.
Right.
Mhm.
100%. And I mean, do you think when you just went into the profession as a trainer, was your philosophy different than what you're saying? I mean, I would assume all three of
Totally.
us had totally different philosophies as trainers when we first started.
Like, I definitely did feel a draw toward having a more holistic approach, and I had wonderful instructors. I attended a year-long personal trainer program as opposed to like a weekend, fly-by-night
Yeah.
certification,
That's
which
refreshing.
really, yeah, exactly. And like those certification courses, even the really top tier ones like NASM and ACE, they really only speak to application. They only really speak to like, okay, here is like your clinical, like, do this and this and this and this. They don't do a lot to actually speak to the person. And so I had great instructors that did talk about that a little bit. So I was already kind of drawn toward a little bit more of a holistic approach, not emphasizing weight and measurements and things like that. However, I was I had my kid in the height of like the mommy blogger days.
Oh
And
God.
it's the beginning of like, people showing off what they eat every meal. And,
Jeez.
look at me. Like we all have the same 24 hours in a day. So there was still like a little bit of that, like, oh, I've got to like promote this part of me because that's what's going to make people believe that I should even be talking about fitness. And then over the years, life challenges all of that. You realize like, and I think that, being in my 40s now is like a blessing because you lose some of like, you don't give as many shits about the trivial stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and you have the life experience to know that like, oh, I can't follow this like cookie cutter approach and do the same thing every single day. Life doesn't happen that way. We go through busy seasons and we go through
Right.
slow seasons.
Mhm.
Um, so where my philosophy like kind of shifted was just sort of recognizing those realities and also like acknowledging my own privilege in the process. These people that are out there talking about having the same 24 hours a day or whatever, they're young. They might not have kids yet.
Yeah, it's not
They're
true.
yeah, their overhead is low. They, or they have inherent privileges that they've carried with them, like, they don't have to worry about their bills or whatever. And I had inherent privileges, even though I was working multiple jobs at the time. I was like, well, I have a partner who also brings in an income. I have some freedom around my daytime hours. Like, not everybody has those things.
Hmm.
And so working with a lot of different people, hearing their struggles, and learning that like I can't shoehorn them into this thing that I've been told I have to be able to do for them. I have to walk that back and again meet them where they are, but then also acknowledging that not everyone has the same fitness goals. And, that's really what kind of helped shape it over the years. But yeah, in the beginning, it was like, you know, oh, just eat more fruit, move more, eat less. Da, 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 da. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
that's
Right.
not how it works.
But the good
No.
part is that you were open to your experience and to allow your experience to actually help evolve how
Mhm.
you do things and how you are seeing things. And I think too, honestly, like with your background of being a child care or early childhood development,
Mhm.
person in a sense, I think that that's an excellent skill set to actually
Mhm.
have for adults.
It really
And
is.
so yes, and so you kind of have that different kind of scope too, where again you're kind of bringing it back into, that space because, again with the things that we do as trainers and dietitians as well, it's like, you're helping those individuals see their wins as they're taking their baby steps and as they're working with their where they are at, like exactly what you were saying. So it's just cool that you also have that background to be able to do that. So
Yeah, it
Well,
really
and
does come into play. And also understanding like, visual learners versus auditory learners. And
that's
some
cool.
people like they have a good movement background and I don't have to do much for them to understand what they're doing. And other people like they need to see me do it a few
Yeah.
times. And that the patience piece is the biggest one. And I'm trying to like do my part on Reddit, like, and informing young and new trainers that
yeah.
like, hey, you might have been told that like this is the ultimate thing that you want to like get your clients to be able to do, whether it's like a perfect squat. I think a squat is actually a great example. Everyone emphasizes ass to grass, the depth of your squat, how close is your butt getting to the floor. Not every body anatomically can
Yeah,
do that.
has that
And
mobility. Absolutely.
Correct.
and so a lot of trainers stress themselves out and they'll post about it. They'll say, I can't get my client to do a proper squat. And I was like, okay, so there's a couple problems with that statement. The I can't get them to do it.
Right.
Mhm.
Like what are you going to do? Break and rearrange their bones? Like,
Right. Exactly.
also like, what is a squat? It's standing up and sitting down. So if squatting in the rack with a barbell feels awful and is scary, and heaven forbid, and I've definitely worked with people like this, they've been told by a doctor in the past, oh, don't squat, don't deadlift or whatever.
Hmm.
Well, how do we like, what is that movement pattern? What are other ways that we can teach them that movement pattern? Does it have
Hmm.
to be with a barbell in the rack? No.
Hmm.
Does that even have to be with free weights initially?
Right.
No. And so, get out of your head in terms of like your performance and your credibility as a trainer rides on getting them to do the perfect squat or getting
Yeah.
them to lose a certain amount of weight or getting them to a finish line in a specific time. Like you have to be able to recognize all the little pieces that have to come together
Right.
and get them to understand has to be a patient process.
Hmm.
So if they don't meet their that landmark in the time that they thought that they wanted to, again, highlighting the wins that they had along the way, but saying like, okay, you know what? We just need a little bit more time with this. And that's okay. Who who's watching you? Who cares? Who cares if it takes you another few weeks? Who cares if it takes you another season to get that PR or whatever it
Right.
is?
Right. Right.
Or maybe you're not going to ever get it, but that
Right.
doesn't mean you're
Mhm.
still not improving.
Oh,
Or
Right.
yeah.
you're still not going to like, what is the end result? Is it
Yeah.
really for health? Is it really for disease prevention? Or is this, I have to have this PR or this, toned body for something else?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I
And
gotta,
that's kind of
obviously I gotta
digging
get the
in.
Strava kudos. I
Yeah,
gotta
Right.
get
right.
Yeah.
likes on Instagram. Like,
Right.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
what are you really doing it for?
Do
Right.
you feel like your governing bodies, whether it's ACE or whatever it might be, all of the different things, are kind of stuck in the past with old school
Absolutely.
education? I
Absolutely.
feel like it's the same for the
Yeah.
academy as
Oh
well,
yeah.
for nutrition and dietetics, that
Oh
we're
yeah.
very stuck. And so young trainers, fitness professionals, dietitians, even I would even go so far as to say those with degrees in kinesiology and like stuff where it's like, oh, you should have more education. You should be a good trainer because you have a degree in kinesiology and you have a different background. There's still this disconnect between what we all practice is the holistic, what's good for your body, and really not worrying about the external physical. But there's a disconnect because that seems to be what majority of trainers, and even we'll throw dietitians in there as well, that's what we're caring about: weight loss, fruits and veggies, calories in, calories out, more muscle, and lifting big weights or running this, and goals. And how why are we in the majority here, or not the
Mhm.
majority, like
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm not sure what my question is, but how do you get young trainers to
Yeah.
not be stuck in
Yeah. Well, I think, if we're looking at the big picture, I honestly would be a proponent for a licensed practice as opposed to one that like just has a certification. Because that's where we get a lot of variance across the country. I've had people that move and like I actually had a client come back on as a virtual client because they moved to LA and they were like,
Oh my
there
gosh.
are trainers out here that are doing
Mm-mm.
what you
the
do.
trainers? My sister lives in LA.
Yeah, it's
It's
like it's all
nut
about
jobs out
making the
there.
body look a certain way, and it's so annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the certification piece, like it's kind of like you study for a test. You study that material, and if it's not a subject that's like tangible, you regurgitate that material for the test, and then it's kind of like
Yep.
out of your head, right?
You make up
And
whatever you want to do.
Yes.
yeah, and so ACE and NASM and other certifying bodies, like they teach to the test, and then you pass that test, and then you're good to go.
Mhm.
There's no real world application, and there's no, when we talk about like the evolution of it, it's like, yeah, there are only so many ways that the body can move. There are only so many movement patterns. Unless you're in Cirque du Soleil, then you have a whole lot more movement.
It's a little different.
Oh my God, I can't even, like when I watch that, I'm like, ooh, my
Oh,
back.
it's so
Mhm.
amazing. I love it
But
so much.
but for the most part, we all have sort of a fixed set of movement patterns. We are fixed in our anatomy, and being able to recognize the differences between bodies. That's something that is greatly lacking in the personal training certification space.
Mhm.
And so we have to really take it upon ourselves for that ongoing education. And I have to have that kind of I have to be, critical of myself in terms of like, all right, is this something that like I need to change about how I teach it. And then I also am critical of the people that I follow and where I get my, I say with air quotes, continuing education from. It's, the YouTube accounts that I follow, the podcasts that I listen to, making sure that these are people also coming from an educated space that are taking the time to understand the nuances of the human form. And that's where I think the certification process is lacking, is it really doesn't speak to the true individuality. It's kind of like, here's your programming, you start here, you move everybody to here, boom, good to go. And it's like, that's not how really anything works where we talk about developing a skill set or, being really proficient in your specialty.
Right.
Well, and for the amount of money that trainers get paid per hour, you think it should go past a certification. And not even that, take it a step further, the potential for injury and liability,
Mhm.
it really should be past the certification, because there is a lot of potential for people to really get
Oh,
hurt.
huge,
Even
huge.
especially you think about like group training. And so you've got kind of this mishmash of different ages and
Yeah.
abilities, and you put together some sort of circuit training, routine, and it may not fit for everyone, even though it's small group and still personalized in a way.
Yeah.
You could really get hurt. And that to me is, again, why is there not a licensing process for this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think what that probably comes down to too is like, who would be the people that would oversee that licensing process? And there's still a lot of sort of infighting in the industry over like what proper training looks like. And that kind of gets into like the specialization. And so there's a lot of fighting between, people that train for aesthetic, people that train for power and strength, and people that just train for like general population longevity, and who's doing it right and who's doing it best. And people, of course, want to pay for what they think is going to be the best thing,
Right.
whatever it
Right.
is. I want the best stylist to do my hair. I want the best massage therapist to, relieve the tension in my body. We all want the best of whatever it is we're going to actually invest in. And so there's still a lot of fighting kind of within the industry over like who has the best approach to training. And again, that's where the individual gets kind of lost in the process. It's like, this is the best approach to training for you because you enjoy it. You enjoy coaching power lifts, or you enjoy coaching endurance athletes, or you enjoy, coaching for flexibility, range of motion, whatever that might be. The best thing for you is the thing that you want to teach. And so we would need a licensing process that would also allow people to specialize. Because right now, everything falls under the same umbrella of personal training, but there's so many niches within that. And I think we'll get the most out of it, most out of, future professional trainers if we give them those pathways to specialize.
Right.
Like most people who do nutrition, they find their niche crowd. So you have registered dietitians that work with athletes, you have ones that work with kids, you have ones that work in a strictly clinical application with like illness and disease and helping them, make sure that their nutrition supports their, whether it's a chronic illness that they're living with or the healing process, like after an organ transplant or whatever. You don't have a registered dietitian that does it all. And I think personal trainers need to recognize they can't do it all either. Find your niche, develop that, and work with those people. Don't try to be the one size fits all trainer,
Well, and perhaps if they were not paid on commission, they would do that a little bit more, and there's a level of respect with the industry. They feel more secure in their role to be able to, state, I enjoy working with powerlifters, therefore that's my niche, even though I have to kind of get rid of these other clients. I'm still making money and I'm still working and I can really focus on this piece. But when you get this commission piece in there, I mean, it's just who can have the most clients.
Absolutely.
And I know at the gym I used to work at for, almost 20 years, it was, if you do not, every month you had to exceed the previous month or at least maintain to get the same commission rate.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Or if you increase, then your commission would increase. And if your client load went down, then your commission goes all the way back down. And it's just like, to me, that's super stressful. So like you'd make, here's $400 one month and 2,000 the next and 500, and you're just like, how do you live like that?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, oh, you're a power lifter? I know nothing about that, but let's go, let's do it. And I think you do see a lot of that happening, especially in younger trainers where it's commission based. They don't get anything per hour unless they're training at a gym. Now they're going to take whoever they want, and it just doesn't matter. And I think that too would need to change within the industry as well.
Yeah. Well, we need the access and opportunity to more kind of niche type fitness environments. Right now, it's kind of like the stepping stones are the same, where most people will put in their time at a big box gym. I did at LA Fitness, and I got out of it because I had to be able to focus on sales to make any money. And I was like, I just want to train the people. Like, I'll feed me whoever you want. That's a learning experience for me, but I don't want to be hounding people. And there was the expectation that I have to be on the phone, making cold calls, getting, like going through basically, they were like, here's a list of all the clients that, are all of the members of the gym, start making cold calls.
Yep.
That's gross. That's so gross, right? But there's not as many opportunities. It's kind of like we're sold on you either work in a big box gym and then you maybe get lucky and work in a place like Lifetime Fitness. I've heard really great things about how they support their trainers. Or more of like a bougie, like kind of athletic.
That was me. Yeah.
Bougie or you go independent, or maybe you find like kind of a co-working gym environment where you have multiple trainers that lease out of the same private space. Or you go completely independent, which I've been able to do, but it was a long process to get here. Talk about having a 5-year plan. This was like my 7-year plan.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's nothing like, there's no real niche spaces in between. And then you have this competing thing that trainers are basically being told, like, if you're not making like 10 grand a month or something, what are you even doing? And like, so this performance piece is attached to like what it means to be a successful trainer, how many clients you ought to have, how much money you ought to be able to bring in. And it feels very like, starts to feel like an MLM. And again, like there's no opportunity to really hone in on the individual piece, working with the individual clients and their needs. It's all about how do I make it
it's all about volume, like
as soon as possible. Volume. Yeah, it's all about volume.
Yeah, I mean, you think about making 10 grand a month. Are you freaking kidding me? I'd have to be working like 50-hour back to back. Like that's ridiculous.
I get those emails all the time, like, never mind that it's all spam. They don't look at my website. They don't know anything about me. They don't know what I do or the people that I serve. But those emails of like, Jennifer Raby, how would you like to have 50 more leads this week?
Oh, of course. Like, yeah. All of that.
How many hours do I, and like, they're not looking to see, like, I'm working on one-on-one with people on an hour basis. I'm like spending
one person.
With one person, 50 minutes. I'm not trying to have 100 clients in a week. I don't have
so ridiculous.
And anyone who thinks that they can handle 100 or 200 or 500 clients like that, you are not getting an individualized program.
Of course not. Not at all. Not at all.
What has been your experience? Let's just switching gears with the nutrition side of things. Like I assume people come in to see you for training and then they say, well, what should I eat?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Like how did you approach that, or what do you do, or what's your philosophy around all of that? Talk about that.
Yeah. My philosophy around that is, simple is better. And so the simplest recommendations that I feel are within my scope to make are to make sure that the clients are checking the boring boxes. So the things that, nobody like, it's not glamorous, but it's like, how is your sleep? Are you remember to like, keep some water with you throughout the day? Did you get some fruits and vegetables? And so I am not going to do a big macronutrient breakdown with my clients because one, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that math. Like I want to work with the body, but also like we're not calorie counting machines or robots. And that's the space that I really want my clients to be in. So instead of like, we could talk big picture, like, okay, what do your breakfasts typically look like? What do your lunches look like? do you actually have legitimate meals or are you snacking throughout the day? Again, meeting them where they're at and be like, anecdotally, here's what I do. This is what supports me as an athlete. This is what supports me as a busy trainer. So if my client feels like they're not recovering well from workouts, then I say, okay, let's look at when you're eating before and after a workout and
Mhm.
what you're eating. If you had a handful of almonds at noon
Right.
and you're working out with me at 5 p.m.,
Right.
we should have we'll have a talk about like, okay, let's talk about some realistic snack options that fit you. And so the only thing I can really prescribe, so to speak, is like, what are the foods that they already eat? What are some foods that they might benefit from focusing a little bit more on? But they have to find what works for them. And so I give the suggestions, but they have to implement. I'm not going to say, eat this for breakfast, eat this for your 11 a.m. snack, eat this for lunch. I don't do any of that. And again, a lot of trainers that want to be able to do it all, they want to offer that nutrition piece. I'm like, the best thing you can do is for coach toward the habits, the habits that you want them to build, the habits you want them to stack. Part of that might be say like, yeah, try to eat an extra piece of fruit today. I'm going to tell you what fruit, but or vegetable, or to have something with fiber in it, right? Try to drink a little bit more water, be intentional about a consistent sleep routine. And that's about it, because the thing is like, no one's going to be perfect every day anyway.
Mhm.
And so if you only try to if you only train people to like be on a regimen, like a strict regimen, Saturday through Sunday or Sunday through Saturday, however you look at your week. If you're only coaching to a strict regimen, they don't know what to do when life gets
Life happens.
Yeah.
exactly. And so I teach them more to like kind of go with the ebbs and flows, like understand that, vacation, holiday eating, of course, that's going to be different.
Yeah.
It should be different. You should
Right.
enjoy that. And then, yeah, aim for some relative consistency in your normal weeks and your body will balance out. And if it's telling you things like if recovery after a workout feels really hard, you're sore for days after a workout, or you start to notice that you're really fatiguing, even just like going up a flight of stairs, your legs are burning. And you're just like, why am I so tired? Just like one flight of stairs. Those are just all signals that like, hey, maybe your body needs a little bit more recovery nutrition. Maybe you need to eat a little bit more consistently throughout your day. Let's like pick one thing, that one little habit that we can like, jump off from.
Right.
And build from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And I assume have you had confrontation with clients who want more and then they get, kind of upset about it?
I try to handle that in the intake process. So I give everyone
nice.
I give everybody a free hour with me. And we also do like a little bit of a light movement assessment. But in that hour is really, I get to know them and where they're coming at, but it's my opportunity to speak my piece. And I don't mind losing that hour if somebody comes in and they're like, well, I just want to be this weight in my wedding dress, but 6 months from now or whatever. And I'll be like, well, I'm not going to weigh you and measure you.
Right.
If you want to stress yourself out by doing that on a daily basis, great. What I'm going to do is look at how you're moving now, look at how we can improve that, whatever activity that you do outside of work, that, that your body feels good in that activity. So and sometimes they have that aha moment within even just that intake where they're like, oh yeah, I do kind of want to think about the things I want to do with my body. Then I can kind of like nudge them. But
you can play it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be like some underlying diet bullshit that I have to like kind of, chip away at. But I'll know after that first session if they have bought into the idea of like, my approach is kind of like everybody is an athlete in some way. Like if you're moving your body of your own volition, I'm going to treat you like an athlete. And some people really buy into that and they're like, yeah, it does feel good to try to like challenge myself in that way.
Mhm.
And other people, they don't. I see it in their face and they're like, I want you to tell me that you're going to help me lose this amount of weight in this amount of time. And I just don't hear back from those people.
Well, because it's not reality. That's the whole
reality.
thing. Like no one can actually tell somebody that, because a body is its own body and a body is going to do what its body's going to do. And you can't really force that to happen.
I tell people like, you can't turn a pit bull into a chihuahua.
Mhm.
or vice
Mhm.
versa.
Yeah.
It's like just as we see all the variations in different breeds and different species, like why would we not regard the human body in the
Right.
same way?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I had wanted to talk about real quick before we have to end here, we were talking about sort of standards of industry and sort of where, everybody's a little bit slow at sort of getting into kind of what's going into now. And what Annie and I work with a lot too is the kind of like health at every size and helping people actually be really comfortable in their body. And you had alluded to understanding that, there's different body shapes, there's different body structures, there's different body, and that is just the truth. And
Mhm.
so, I think my question is, when you do meet that individual who's just like, I basically want to look like a different human being, you know,
Mhm.
how have you kind of worked with that person that really struggles with their own body image or that they're still fighting internally that they can force their body to look in a way that it never will because it's just not their genetic makeup.
We usually sort of have to have a conversation of like where that thinking is coming from. And so part of my intake form is like that three-layered why. So, what is your goal? Why is that your goal? Let's dive a little deeper. Why is that? What is important about that previous statement that you just told me? And usually, if you could dig a few layers deep, you'll either find out that there's some sort of like internalized messaging that they grew up with. I mean, we were kids of the 80s and 90s, so we know all about that.
Yep.
So there's some sort of internalized messaging that I have to kind of help chip away at, or that again, they've just been sold by louder and less experienced voices in the industry that changing your aesthetic is the goal of training.
Mhm.
And so if I can help them sort of identify more intrinsic goals,
Mm.
ones that they would be like,
Mm.
because you have your extrinsic goals, which is usually like a change in appearance, a change in weight, a change in like body composition. And then your intrinsic goals, like, how do I want to feel? I want to feel more capable. I want to feel more
Right.
confident in certain movements. I don't want to hurt myself
Mhm.
with my hobbies, whatever they may be. And when I can get them to dive just a little bit deeper to find a deeper why, and then that's what I really hone in on.
Hmm.
So if when they go back to having doubts because they haven't lost the weight that they thought they would, or their body isn't changing, their body composition isn't changing as fast as they thought it should. I work on helping them eliminate that should from their
Hmm.
vocabulary.
Yep.
I work on reminding them of their small wins, going back to that. And then I also try to work on, you know, I can do this because I've been here for 10, 10 plus years in the industry, close to 15 years in the industry. But so I have the client base that like if somebody doesn't like what I say and they leave me because of it, it's like, fine, I'm gonna
That's
fill that.
fine.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Right.
But the thing that I say is like, you're operating on false information.
Right.
Your brain is lying to yourself, and the things that you tell yourself, like your body is listening. And so we do a little bit of like kind of headspace work. Is like
Good.
why do you keep coming back to what you look like? When I joke about having a negativity jar that they have to put money in when they say
Hmm.
something about themselves. Like when you tell me that like you can't watch your form in the mirror because you can't stand how you look, like the thoughts that you're having about your body right now, would you ever have that thought about a friend or relative,
Hmm.
even another stranger on the street? And they're like,
Right.
oh, and I'm like, why are you letting yourself be this cruel to yourself?
Right.
So teaching that self-compassion piece and like then over time they do kind of I've had a few people who really did shift away from the having to lose weight and look a certain way to be successful.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh, like one person I had frozen shoulder when they
Mhm.
first came into me. And between working with me and their physical therapist, they can put their arms up, they can move weight overhead, no problem now. But it was a process, it's a long
Yucky.
injury to come back from. And when they realized, like, oh my gosh, it's been a couple of weeks and I haven't even thought about my shoulder or that pain or whatever, all of a sudden, all the thoughts they had about like having a little extra roundness around their belly disappeared.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's what we want. We
Yeah,
want you to be strong.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you might have a belly while you're doing it, but if
right.
you feel good and you're sleeping well and you're eating well and you're seeing changes in what you can do, then you're successful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. I have seen some very drastic kind of, I don't want to use the word like transformations, but I would say some very drastic changes in some people. And it's very interesting because I think the biggest thing is that those are never maintained.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they go back to sometimes even a different shape. Sometimes they just sort of balance it out, right? Like not as extreme and a little bit more balanced from maybe where things were. But my ultimate thing is what I'm saying is that, the body will always find its way to balance. The body will always find its way back to where it actually wants to
Yep.
go. And so, when I'm hearing people, say like, I want to be like that or I need to be, and it's just like, again, I don't know if your body really wants to go there because honestly, what you're seeing from other people is super, super temporary, or, they're really harming themselves in some way that they're not sharing. You know what I'm saying? Where that's going to end up still biting them in the butt on some health level, right? Whether you're physically seeing or whether it's internally happening. And it's just trying to help people get away from this whole it's such a distorted image, of how things should and shouldn't be in that, everybody has this right to like, have ripped abs where it's just like, I don't even, are we all supposed to? I'm pretty darn sure that that's not
Anyone?
everybody's, again, that's that 1% of body, body
Physique. Yeah.
genetics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Physiology.
like, it
Yeah.
doesn't need, again, does this actually bring you happiness? Do you wake up and go, oh, I love my abs so much, and this is what brings me joy all day? Really?
Mhm.
Because that's just feels like a really like not very full life, you know what I'm saying? So
Right.
anyway, and that's just kind of why
Yeah.
I bring that up. But definitely love that you have that ability to
Mhm.
help people hone in on that and get connected to look at what you are achieving, look at how you are feeling, reminding them, you just told me that you're happier because of X. So can we detach on the look part, right? Because you're actually having a happier human experience. So
Exactly. And
anyway,
if you speak to the performance piece,
yeah,
you know, once your body, like if you are supporting however you want to perform, whether it's light day to day or actual, like, what we consider athletic performance, if you support your body and how you want it to perform and you let it do what it's going to do, like you will feel your best. And we just have to like kind of shut out all the noise about, oh, well, if you don't look a certain way, then how can you really consider yourself fit? It's like, if your labs are looking good, if you're moving good, if you've got good muscle tone, bone density, like all of those things, and so when people want to have those markers of improvement, I go back to, the health piece and like, well, go get that stuff checked out so you could just see how good your body is actually
that's
doing.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so true. So, just in finishing up here, we like to ask all of our guests, final question of what is your favorite food?
Oh gosh. We have we have exposure to such amazing cuisine here in Atlanta. We have an awesome international food scene.
Mhm.
If you're ever in the Atlanta area, I highly recommend finding a place
Cool.
on Buford Highway is the place to go if
Mhm.
you want good international food. So I would say now that it's getting colder right now, currently a good bowl of tonkatsu ramen
Mhm.
is good
Wow.
is going to
Yeah.
be a staple in the colder months for me for sure.
Sounds
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
Very
It is
cool. Very
awesome.
cool.
I love it.
I know, but that
Yeah.
sounds like such a bougie answer, but I'm like, it's really not. It's
No, I
like
love that. Yeah.
like such a simple meal, but yeah, that's our go-to is hot noodle bowls.
That's
Nice.
so cool. Yeah,
Well,
that
look
sounds
at you're a trainer
amazing.
and you eat noodles. I
Right.
think
Yeah, I
I
do
know I
eat
eat
noodles.
carbs. Oh my God.
amazing. Well, thank you so much. I am so happy we were able to have you on, and You're incredible. So thank you for all
Thank
the work that
you.
you're
Thank you.
doing.
I know it's been a few years in the making, but thank you
Yeah,
so much.
no.
And I've admired you since I listened to you talking to, or heard you talking to Ryan on Adventure
Oh,
Jogger.
yeah. Yep. Yep.
And, ever since the Twinkie conversation, I'm like, those are that's my people.
Those
That's
are
my
the
people.
people.
Yeah.
Those are my people. Yep, absolutely. So we look forward to seeing you again in the next couple of years, hopefully, and having you back at some point. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jennifer. Thanks for being here.
thank you.
Bye.